All right. Well, it seems like in the MMA community, it seems like the Sean Strickland and the Dricus Duplessis fight is really the only thing people are really talking about. I mean, there's a couple things going on. Like I saw Aljamain is kind of doing some jiu-jitsu tournaments. He has a fight coming up. People are kind of talking about Connor and Chandler, and there's other things out on the horizon, like who's going to be fighting on UFC 300. Is Dustin Poirier going to be fighting Nate Diaz? There's some stuff, but for the most part, it seems like the drama of Sean Strickland and everything that happened with Dricus, from the press conference to the fight at the event, everything going on, it seems to be like the core of it. So I kind of figured I would make a video talking about like how indeed as much detail as I could how the fight will go. Now this is an interesting fight because some fights you can kind of say, well, I mean, like Leon Edwards versus Usman, the second fight. I mean, if you went into that, you'd say, well, Usman's he's just gonna get him. He's gonna take him down. He's gonna ragdoll him, and he's gonna ground and pound him, or he's gonna hit him with, like a right hook and knock him out. It seemed like Edwards would just be on the back foot trying to land something the whole time and then just get exhausted. Fights like that. There's a lot of fights like that, right? Like Volkanovski versus Islam. A lot of people thought he was just gonna get out wrestled the whole time. But I think with this fight, it's interesting because both guys have similar resumes. They have similar fighting styles. And I know on the surface, it doesn't look like it. Like a lot of people think Sean Strickland is kind of like a Philly shell Mayweather guy. He'll throw like a random leg kick, a couple of T kicks here and there, and he'll just throw a bunch of straight punches. Like he doesn't really throw hooks all that much. He tends to throw like a lot of jabs, a lot of like 1-2s, like 1-1-2s. He'll throw a lot of stuff like that. He tends to throw the 1-2 and then kind of go in the Philly shell. He's not really a counter guy. He's mainly like a high volume pressure, but he also has takedowns. And I think that is something that his coaches and other people have kind of said, okay, this is what you're going to do if you're going to be an MMA fighter. But the problem is Sean has a preference. He wants to fight a specific way because of his mental traumas from his past. Like he wants to strike. I mean, there's videos out there of him talking to guys while fighting. And, there was one video of him fighting this black guy, and they were boxing, and the whole time he was just talking smack to this guy. Like you could feel like the anger, the hate. Obviously, these guys were talking online, and then Sean just said, "Come in here." But a lot of it is kind of him throwing his, that's his way of coping. Him getting out the venom, so to speak, that event caused. It's kind of a continuous thing. So when the fight starts, he's most likely going to come out. He's going to be very, very defensive. He'll throw jabs here and there. And then maybe he'll throw like a couple T kicks, a couple, maybe like calf kicks. Not serious calf kicks. He's not the type of guy to chop you down. And then he'll just kind of like, inch you forward with the arm punches, right? Because he doesn't throw waist punches. He throws arms. So they're very, very quick. It's hard to defend against them because you can't really see him coming, because he's not really like, when people bob and weave punches like Muhammad Ali, it's mainly coming because you can see the punches coming before they get thrown. And same thing with like a gun. If someone tried to shoot you with a gun, you see the gun, you see where it's pointing, and you move out of the way before the bullet gets fired. So you move out of the way before. But if you were standing there and he fired the gun at you and then you try to move, you'd get shot. So we're not faster than a lot of things. But the thing is we're smart enough to see something before it comes. But when you don't use the waist, when you're not showing like where things are coming from, when you just throw the punch, it's way faster. Now, the downside to this is you lose a lot of power, but the accuracy and the points you get from this are very, very high. And obviously, Sean isn't, this is perfect for him because he doesn't have the power to knock you out anyways. Like maybe if he landed really, really clean and you had a bad chin, maybe he could take you out that way. But even then, I don't see him knocking a guy out in one punch. Like I see it coming from like an avalanche of dozens of punches. Now the problem with this is Dricus is he's a big, strong guy. He's very, very tough. If you watch him in his fights, he's able to really, he's able to stand in the pocket with a lot of power strikers. and he's got a big head, and having a big head is a major factor in whether or not people can knock you out. I mean, you look at Tito Ortiz, and yeah, he got knocked out kind of later on in his career, but like in the beginning of his career, guys were only TKOing him even when they won. Because I think one thing he said was his big head, but I do think that is kind of an advantage that people don't talk about. Like if you have that big head, then you can kind of walk through a lot of punches. Like you could safely take one in order to land one. Now I think you're going to see Sean Strickland, and he's gonna come to the middle. He's going to try to out jab, try to outbox Dricus. Now Dricus has information now. He knows that he's felt Sean's power to a degree, so he knows like, this guy doesn't hit too hard. I can kind of keep my hands up. I can kind of walk through a couple of his punches in order to land like a power hook, in order to go in for a single leg, in order to land something from him. So it's going to be kind of that Canier fight. It's going to be like, can Strickland kind of like outbox him? Because he's not going to be able to do what he did to Izzy, because Izzy doesn't really have like Izzy likes to snipe you at a distance. He does have power in certain positions, like in counter punching, but he's not the type of guy to come forward, throw power shots, and knock you out. That's not what he does. He all his knockouts are usually like he'll lean back and then he'll land like a left hook, or something along those lines. Which again didn't, that's not going to be something that Sean does. He's going to be landing. He's going to be coming forward, landing teep kicks. He's going to be landing basically a lot of low kicks. A lot of jabs and the straight punch. But again, those are arm punches. Dricus is a very strong guy. I think he's going to be able to power through all of that. And he's going to be the one putting Sean on the back foot. He's going to be probably putting Sean up against the fence. Some channels I've watched, they've actually they've talked about how, most of Sean's, whenever he does loses or whenever he does have close decisions, basically a close fight or a loss, it tends to be when he's on the back foot. He tends to fight his best. His rhythm is when he moves forward. And the worst matchup for him is probably Dricus. He's a tough guy. He comes forward. He has an unorthodox style. That's going to be a interesting variable, is that we have two guys with two unorthodox styles. You have Sean Strickland with an unorthodox style, and then you also have Dricus with an unorthodox style. He tends to switch stances a lot. He tends to have kind of a weird stance, like when he was fighting Robert, you could see Robert's stance. It was, it was a very martial arts stance. He had like wide legs, kind of like a karate kind of stance. He was kind of bobbing up and down, but not too much. Like he was just using it as a kind of a movement feint. And he had he had his hands low because he tends to be a counter puncher, and he feints a lot. And but we saw with Dricus that his style, again, it's very strange. And the thing about a lot of fighting is we tend to get very used to the guys that we're sparring against. We're used to Muay Thai styles. We're used to boxers. We're used to some karate. We're used to some guys. And every now and then you're going to fight a guy that has a weird style. But the problem is when it's some weird style you've never seen, you tend to go into like fight or flight mode. So you tend to you want to figure the guy's style out before you engage, because there's that chance that you may catch something that you've never seen before. Like let's say you come in and all of a sudden you get hit with some weird capoeira move or something along those lines. So a lot of guys, when you see these weird unorthodox fighters, a lot of guys are constantly running away from them because they don't really understand how to attack those things. So that's another factor we're going to have to see is whose unorthodox style is going to put the other one in that kind of weird like flight mode where they're like, wait a second, let me give up 1 or 2 rounds in order to figure out what this is, and then I'll feel safe to kind of engage and then try to defeat it. But I do think that most likely Dricus is going to put Sean on the back foot. He's going to have him up against the cage most of the fight, and then you're going to see Dricus doing a lot of stance switches, and then he's going to come in and throw a lot of combination punches, which again, Dricus has power. He did finish Robert Whittaker in the second round, which, he did fight against a lot of guys with power. Robert, he fought against Vittori, a lot of guys, but he didn't have, but Dricus was able to solve the problem. He was able to kind of push him up against the fence and finish him, because again, he's a very intelligent fighter. He could bob, he could weave, he knows how to feint. A lot of guys don't know how to like get past that, and Dricus did. So, I mean, I wouldn't consider Sean like his fighting style is more tough guy, whereas Roberts is more high IQ, and he was able to get through that kind of high IQ barrier that Robert puts up, which is the feints and the kicks and stuff. He just kind of like he just tanked it. He just like pushed his way through essentially. And Sean doesn't have any power or any weapons really to keep him back. Maybe the teep kick can kind of keep him back because, again, that's a body shot. And if you look at Dricus's, like, his defense, it's mainly, like, head focused. So I think the teep kick will definitely be probably Sean's best way to keep Dricus at a distance would be the teep kick. It won't really be jabs or straight punches because he'll just keep his hands up and then move past, and then he'll throw a combination. The leg kicks, again, Dricus could counter those, or he'll just eat it. He's kind of a tank, so it's not really going to be something to keep him back, because that's what Sean needs. He needs to keep him up against the fence, and he needs to piece him up, and then pour on so much volume that's when the damage starts accumulating. That's when the cardio starts decreasing. That's when you put people in the deep waters, so to speak. And that's where Sean, that's his rhythm. That's the element that he needs to put these guys into in order to win. I don't think he'll be able to do that to Dricus. I think Dricus is just he's too earthy. Guy's kind of like a boulder in a lot of ways, an unorthodox boulder, and he's going to come at you. He's probably, if I had to bet money, I would say Dricus is probably the better wrestler. He's probably the stronger guy. He has power. All he has to do is just kind of like get through Sean's barrier that he puts up with the jab and the feints, and then just kind of throw power hooks, get him up against the fence, probably take him down, and then ground and pound. If he wants to add a cherry on top, Sean is, again, the type of guy to talk smack in an actual fight. And if Dricus wants to, he could bring up everything he said at the press conference while he's like on top. And he could bring that up, or he could do it while striking and then have a specific word. He could say, he could say something. I'm not gonna give him ammo, but he could bring that up in the fight if he's having problems. And then, Sean may lose it, come straight at him, and then that's when Dricus will land a power shot. So if he wanted to, that's another level of like, well, if you're having trouble getting past a teep, or he's doing something we didn't plan for in the fight, he could use verbal warfare to emotionally get Sean to come into there, or he'll even gas out. Even if he wasn't able to counterpunch him and knock him out, he can gas Sean out. Sean will lose it, and then just, no matter the gas tank, no one has an unlimited supply of stamina unless you're on something, and he would gas himself out. He would maybe throw, the whole kitchen sink at Dricus, which probably won't finish him at all, and then he'll be gassed out. So there's a lot of ways Dricus can win, and if I had to put money on someone, I'm definitely going to put it on Dricus.